Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Just want to give an intro to myself. So I'm Sandeep. I've been at the One Group for 9 years and cover HR recruitment across Northamptonshire and Milton Keynes. We are here today with Emma and Claire from CE People, who have kindly come along to discuss everything around growth, change and resilience. Claire and Emma, if you'd like to give a little bit of an intro to yourselves.
Yep. So I'm Claire. This is Emma.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
We started a company, CE People, just over a year now. We've just had our first anniversary at the start of June. So we're very proud of where we're at and what we've achieved in that short space of time. And it has gone incredibly quickly. But thank you ever so much for inviting us in. And really looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, it'll be amazing. And I guess the main aim of our LinkedIn Live today is to discuss, I guess, predominantly SMEs, restructures, strategy, looking at growth and resilience. So it'll be really good to be able to delve into that a little bit more. And I guess just to give an overview to everyone, this is pre-recorded. But we will be able to answer any questions once this goes live. So we will be able to respond and give feedback as well. So getting started. So I guess initially looking at restructuring, Claire and Emma, what would you see as some of the main common mistakes that SMEs tend to come across when restructuring?
I think the biggest one is no one plans it. That smaller businesses, it needs to happen now. From the amount of times, like, we're at this point, it needs to happen. Okay, when do you need this to happen by? Well, last week. And there's just no planning or time given to these things. And the key to doing it successfully is to plan and to map it out and to understand what your end goal is and how to get there, but by ticking the right boxes along the way. And that's,
I think that, and just picking up on something Emma said there, it is knowing what the end goal needs to look like, and fundamentally work back from that. So, and I think sometimes it can look like a daunting task, but really it doesn't need to be. I think sometimes it can be, analysed or thought about too much, just simplify it, given the right advice or guidance. It doesn't need to be a daunting task.
And it doesn't always mean redundancies. It doesn't, my favourite analogy is you should always shake the tree first to understand what talent you've already got within your business already, what can be nurtured, what can be developed, and how can you to shape the current people that you've got into supporting the changes that a business faces.
And I think also we see a lot of SMEs promoting from within. And, because somebody does a job really well, that they automatically assume that they're going to step up to the next level and be great managers. And quite often that is not the case. To be a great manager or to be a great leader, that takes an element of training, of skill, of knowledge. There's very few natural born leaders in the country. And so that development is critical. But it's always easy for a business owner to just say, well, they're great at that. It's like having a salesperson and going, well, they're great at sales, so we'll make them the next sales manager or the next sales director. Doesn't just because they're good at being a salesperson doesn't necessarily make them right at being a manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see it a lot from a recruitment perspective when speaking to businesses, that it's a bit of a misconception, like you've mentioned, that moving someone up and promoting them, we speak to people, and I speak to a lot of people that say actually they thought they wanted that, they step into the role and realise it's not what they're wanting to do. So that's a really good point. And going back to what you mentioned as well, Emma, around, I guess, the word restructure, there's probably an element of taboo around it because anyone in the business that hears that word instantly thinks, oh no, what's going to happen? That's redundancies.
Yeah.
When it isn't always the case, you know, it's down to making a business, giving business stability as well. So, and how would you, from your perspective, what would you say to business leaders around how they would approach restructuring, that where they're able to protect their employees, protect the senior leadership team, but then also their brand as well?
I think the biggest thing in all of this is the art of communication. You know, people, whether you're at leadership level, directorship level, whether you're, you know, part of a team of people that are potentially going to go through some changes, you know, part of a business, part of a team, whatever that may look like, the biggest thing that Emma and I say to everybody is communication. And we've been through, you know, some
with a plan.
Yeah.
I'm the planner, Claire's the communicator.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would always want to know at what stage what is going to happen, because if you communicate the plan wrong, or if you communicate at the wrong time, then you give the wrong message, and you're playing with people's lives. You know, when you are, it's huge, and how you deal with that is how you protect your brand, because you know your reputation here is at stake, because you don't want to dissolve a company, you want to make the company into a place that is going to thrive,
that's got a culture and an environment where people want to work. And so we all know it's that age-old expression of bad news travels a lot faster than good news. So when a company does something incorrectly, you know, or not to the plan, not to the schedule, that can go quite catastrophically wrong, because a disgruntled or an upset individual, employee, team member will talk about that to everybody that they know, and then that's what can also start to damage your brand or your reputation, and you know, it then becomes harder to recruit for the right people. If that recurringly happens, it definitely has an impact. So
really difficult as well not to rush, because when you're in one of those, you just want it to get wrapped up, completed and resolved, because you have people that are upset, people that there's a lot of uncertainty, and you just want to put it to bed. So very easily you go, oh, just quickly make some decisions, but and that's where it goes wrong every time. You just must stick to a structure, stick to the timelines, and deliver it fairly, because otherwise you'll have some people that no answers and no things and it just goes wrong.
Yeah, and that's down to communication.
Yeah,
it does. And I guess it's also because everyone's so different in a business, everyone will take that differently. They'll hear a comment, or they'll hear some news, and everyone will react differently as well. So I think being conscious of that, I imagine, is going to be a big part. And from your perspective, Claire Emma, where would you say HR sits in regards to a restructure? So what part would they play when it comes to
the forefront?
They absolutely are.
If they're not,
there's a problem. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, is that they assume that HR is there to come in and maybe do the documentation or minute something. You know, it's completely undervaluing and underestimating the value that actually a HR professional can add to the process that you're going through. You know, engaged at the right time, which is fundamentally at the beginning. You know, they can set the scene, set the tone, you know, do the mapping of the exercise, schedule that all out, timings,
review the skill sets. That's the first thing you should. What have you already got? Where can people be redeployed? Where can, you know, what I've always found that HR know the people really, really well, like management, and they tend to know their teams, but HR can have that broader spectrum and review of everybody, because if they are in place already, they will know everybody. It's just a case of knowing one team from one line manager. So you're getting a biased opinion of somebody. We should be able to provide the unbiased review of all people.
Yeah, absolutely. And where would you say what would you say the grey areas or the risks that would come in for senior leaders that they'll have to be mindful of when considering a restructure?
I think, yeah, those risks, they're as broad as they're long, I guess. The risks are not communicating, not engaging, non-compliance, not mapping out a plan, not knowing what the end goal is and where you need to get to, the risk of, unfairly, if redundancies are involved, unfairly dismissing somebody, not
changing someone's role. If they're retained, like employment law is really complex, especially with the changes that are happening at the moment. If you don't do the process correctly, and I must say we do see it all the time. It's like someone's moved roles, they've not been consulted, or there's been a conversation but it's not been documented, and it's just making sure you tick all the boxes. There are so many grey areas because you think, well, they're just moving jobs, it's fine, or they're that we're putting them on, we're going to train them and we're going to do this, but it never happens. Or there's so many promises that is often made in these scenarios
and never seen through.
And it's
but I think and then there's always the risk of a claim, an unfair dismissal claim, or and discrimination, whatever that might be. There's always that risk there as well. So
if the age-old play as well, if you're not doing skills matrices, and if you're not scoring people correctly and fairly, the key here is fairly, that sadly there are scenarios where people will score to ensure the right people are remained. Do you know what I mean? They've been selected. It's avoiding those scenarios.
And there's also things to take into consideration. If you're making more than 20 odd people redundant, collective consultation applies. So for those larger SMEs, we know that people automatically think you've got to enter into consultation one-on-one, but as soon as you get to a certain number, the rules change. So it's being aware of everything. And I think what we've realised is that we work with business owners now every day, and they're absolutely outstanding at what they do, at driving their business forward and achieving those business goals, etc. And as we've learned as business owners, we outsource a lot of our functions because it's not our, So, I think we definitely are those people that says stay in the lane, understand where the skill is, utilize that skill to the max. And so if you're a business owner and you're going through these changes, restructuring, or whatever it might look like, is involving people, I suppose, see the value of what a HR professional can bring to the table, and pull together a strategy and a plan and what that needs to look like.
I think you can't plan for every eventuality. You can't plan for how anybody's going to react in these scenarios. So I think you've just got to be broad enough and have enough knowledge to be able to respond correctly to lots of different people's needs. I think that's the key, which isn't an easy task.
No, it isn't. It's tricky. And I think, like you mentioned as well, that planning is probably the key aspect of it. Anyone that's going to go head first into a restructure and not consider everyone, and it's difficult to do because, again, everyone's different, but consider as much as they can what could happen. I think that's probably the most important aspect. And from your perspective, I guess, for SMEs and maybe even any size business that have HR in place, HR teams, where would they start? What's the best way to start when it comes to workforce planning? What's your thought process around the starting point for that?
It's got to align with your business goals, haven't you? So you've got to want to know where you want to be. And I think if you're workforce planning for growth, it's different to workforce planning for
cost saving
or a turbulent market that you foresee. It depends on the driver, most definitely. But we would always say, don't jump into it. And again, especially with SMEs, the time isn't necessarily always there
or factored in.
It's usually more of an immediate need.
I was going to say it's always a little bit more lastminute.com and I need this to happen next week. Okay, that's a big ask. Exactly. There are processes that you need to go through, and I think 9 times out of 10, when you actually sit down, and we've done it just quite recently with a business owner and sat down and had a conversation, and they fundamentally need to do some cost saving. When you talk through the plan and you understand where they want to get to and why, and you talk through their options, because there are always options. You talk to them about the skills that they have in the business and can they afford to lose those, and what does that look like? Who's going to pick up that workload if that person wasn't around? Can you upskill in other areas? And I think sometimes just sitting there having an open and honest but private and confidential conversation with a business owner highlights so many things that maybe just allows them to go away and think, and digest, and then, reconvene, go again. But there's a different mindset there the second time around. I've taken on board what you've said. I've considered these things. So it's just making sure that you've considered everything. And Emma and I would never advise anybody to go against, what needs to happen. But we will always advise to factor in the impact on the workforce, the impact on, or take into account considerations. There is a lot there to consider.
But there's wider aspects as well, isn't there? Sorry, Sunny. You have to look at what the industry is doing and what the economic market's doing as well to bring it all into play. You can't just look at your business and where your business has got to go to. You've got to factor everything in, because they will all massively have an impact on your growth or your change or your drivers.
Yeah, and I guess it brings me to the next question, because we are in such uncertain times at the moment, and I get that's across a lot of industries, a lot of conversations that we're having and I'm having with businesses as well, that they just can't foresee what's going to be happening in the future. I mean, from your perspective, with that in mind, how would you advise senior leaders within an SME to make sure that any workforce planning they do now does align with their goals in the future, considering what is happening and how uncertain it is at the moment?
It's difficult because, like you say, nobody has a magic wand. Nobody has a ball that you can read into the future. I think for me, it's knowing what skill sets your business needs, and filling those as much as you possibly can.
Make them adaptable as well.
Absolutely.
Depending on what level or role that you're recruiting for or that you're planning for, is, what's the scope within that role? So to make the role a little bit more juicy, so that there's development so you can retain, but equally it's adaptable based on the market needs and how that's going to come, which isn't easy to do, but it is doable. It absolutely is doable, because there are a lot of roles that are, multifunction, and
especially in smaller businesses, when you go into the corporate world, you've got one person doing this one job and that's it, that's what they focus on. But in the world of SME, one person's role is very varied, and with lots of different touch points. So, it is making sure that you are hitting all those touch points. When you are recruiting, if there's a gap there, an immediate gap, then maybe you outsourced or contractors or temps or whatever it might be to fill those immediate needs whilst you're still planning for the long term, most definitely.
So bringing me on to the topic around recruitment, growth, going out to market, I guess that brings me to the next question around job descriptions, because it's so important, especially from our perspective, seeing it with businesses, is going out to market with the right job description as well. I guess, what would be your advice in regards to making sure, especially from an SME perspective, when you may have a role that's got multiple different aspects to it. What would be your advice around job descriptions and recruitment campaigns going out to market when you are going through growth or restructures?
One, they're not just for recruitment. That's
No.
the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we tend to see, especially in SMEs.
There's so many people that don't have them. So for us, number one is that how can you expect an employee to understand what you want from them and what you're expecting them to deliver? You know, when there's nothing, there's nothing there planned or mapped out or documented. So I think that's point number one. When you do come to recruiting or re-advertising for a role or a new role or a placement, you know, a to-do list, a job list, a job description is not a to-do list. No. And we see that so much.
Absolutely.
You know, which you know, I understand it makes me smile.
List of tasks.
You know, a job list should be able to evidence accountability as well. You know, again, we speak to so many SMEs or so many directors that talk about, you know, their workforce or individuals not being accountable for their roles. Do they understand? It raises for me so many knock-on questions.
Just needs to have some scope around what you want to develop out of the role, not for the here and the now, but yes, for the here and the now, for the future as well. So it's again, you don't want to be rewriting them all the time. So it's a case of what do you want out of the role and align the job description with that. And not the easiest things to write.
And Sunny, you will know this.
Absolutely.
We definitely, you know, it's not. It is something you definitely need to just set yourself aside some time, get your head down, focus, concentrate, know what you want from that individual.
Not know what you want from the individual. No, from
the
role
part of the team,
and not the person.
Okay,
don't fit the job description for the person.
No, not okay. When I say for the individual, it is
individual role.
And it is really important. And like you said, I see it all the time. We see job descriptions and we'll meet with a client, we'll go through the role and realise half the job description isn't actually the role. And it's really important, especially from our perspective, being able to go out to market and be fully transparent with someone to say, this is what the role is. Are you happy? Do you feel your skill set is right for the position? So it's really, really important. I don't think everyone thinks that, doesn't think about how important that aspect is. And from your perspective, with uncertain times at the moment as well, how do you balance the skill gaps that we have today with mixing that in with planning for the future within a business? So workforce planning, skills gaps. How would you put that together? Where would you start?
Well, I think, like we said, the whole understanding what your immediate needs are, you know, in any business, whatever your immediate needs are, we absolutely would be working with owners to make sure that they are fulfilled, even if it means going outside and external of what you already currently have. But then then for me, you move into that process of, right, what have you got and what do you need and what does the future look like? And you start that whole process that we've just been talking about, you know, from, you know, if you're looking to treble in size in the next 3 years, you know, then what does that scale up look like to you? You know, what areas of your businesses are weak? What needs strengthening? You know,
what can you afford?
What can you budget? Absolutely. There's a lot of questions in there that we would ask, and you know, hopefully would make somebody think to then sit there and pull together that original plan of what the end goal looks like. And again, you start working back from that.
It's not set in stone either.
It's not. No, you're then planning to go, okay, well, out of everything we've discussed, you know, we went into a client recently and I said to them, you know, if you were given a blank sheet of paper and you could draw your company organizational structure, what would that look like? Forget what you have now. Forget what skills there are. Forget the people, forget everything. What would that dream company, organization, org chart look like to you? You know your business well enough, you know where you want to take it. So let's make that our starting point. And, it was a great place to start working back from. And we're actually just working with her at the moment to go through that process.
Which is amazing. And it's really nice for someone to see that in front of them. And actually, probably, I imagine when a business owner looks through it, they realise what is priority, what needs to be done, what doesn't actually need to be done immediately. And what would you exactly? Oh, sorry, Claire.
Yeah, no, it does make it clearer. And I think also it makes a business owner think. It makes them think about what they've got, what's important. This person made some comments about, well, these are their tasks, but actually they've completed those tasks in a much shorter space of time than their working day. So then you can start to look to consolidate or, develop that individual in another area and upskill them and take on other tasks, functions. It's a real eye-opening subject and conversation to have that I think possibly, multiple businesses out there could benefit from having.
100%. Oh, absolutely. And would you say, especially sort of, with your years of experience within HR, well-being, building culture, what would you say is a sort of simple, cost-effective, but powerful ways for an SME business to build a culture? So is there certain that would support growth, performance within different teams? What would you say from you've seen that works?
I think culture is not an overnight thing.
No.
Culture is built. It's embedded into a business. It's
from the top.
It has to be from the top down or from the bottom up, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's absolutely, it's engagement, it's retention, it's the environment, it's values, there's so many contributing factors.
It can be simpler, can't it? Though, just knowing your staff, people that work for you. That's how you show your value. But also know where your business wants to go, because if you don't know your business, you're never going to have values, and you're not going to.
And everybody needs to feel a part of the journey. I think that's one big thing for me. If you want your employees and your workforce to be engaged, they've got to feel like they are adding value. They've got to feel like they're playing a key part in, your goals, what you're trying to deliver, and then they start to feel embedded into the business, and all of the other things start to evolve with it. So culture is not a button that you can flick on and off. It's something that is built over time.
Absolutely. And we see it all the time when recruiting, speaking to people that are part of businesses. Loyalty goes a long way. I know from a salary perspective, benefits, etc., is really important, but for a lot of people, it is being a part of something. So I definitely agree, that's a massive aspect. And how would you, I guess, what would you say, Claire and Emma, around leaders, how they would bring HR into being more proactive rather than reactive when it comes to business goals and successes? Where would you, how do they go about doing that?
I think there is, and it really comes down to perception. People's perception of what HR are and where do they add their value. And, quite often, we are, we've witnessed this, firsthand, where people just bring HR in when there's a problem and they're there to fix a problem or to, make sure that they are compliant if they're not. It's, for us, that they're the parts that we call the tick box exercises.
Absolutely.
That's the bread and butter of HR, day in and day out. That just needs to be there, sitting in the background, and it needs to happen on a daily basis. But actually, if somebody sees the true value of what HR can bring to the table, and it isn't that many years back when HR wouldn't be seen at a board table, or weren't given that voice you know, to have a say or to have an opinion.
Or decisions, make the decisions.
Yeah, but it's bringing them in at that level now. You should be, they should be there first and foremost in anything that involves your workforce.
Yeah, absolutely.
I once said to somebody that their most valuable asset are the people who work within their business. If you was to rip out every single employee, could you still deliver as a business on a daily basis? The answer is 9 times out of 10, no. So if you don't see value in your workers, you know, your workforce, sorry, your employees, you know, that to me is just sad.
We always lead with being present, don't we?
Very much.
We want to, even with our outsourced clients, we work to build relationships with everybody. We don't just talk with business owners. It's about building relationships, being therefore their staff can talk to us, their staff know that there is another voice outside of the owner or the managing director, or and we're there to support everybody, not just the business.
Amazing. And what would you say, Claire and Emma, when I guess one piece of advice before we do go, but one piece of advice for any employers that are watching today that you would say they could take away from this? What would be the piece of advice?
I think for me, just having just literally said it a minute ago, for me it is seeing the value that a HR professional can bring to your business. I think it is, for me, it's sad, but it's so massively undervalued, and people see it as an insurance policy, or they see it to overcome a claim that's just come through the door, or a problem employee. Just give it a try. What have you got to lose? Engage with an outsourced HR consultancy of some form, doesn't matter who, but they will add, if done correctly, so much value to your business.
And I think if you're unsure, if you're unsure of a decision that you're making, I think HR will always provide an unbiased view. So if you're making some decisions and you're thinking, we're not agreeing as a management team, or that there's an impartial person that will lead with people first, we HR should provide that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claire and Emma. It's been amazing. Thank you. It's been really enjoyable. And thank you for everyone that's logged on today and watched. As I said, feel free to comment, send us a direct message if you've got any questions. Claire and Emma are really keen to hear your thoughts and answer any questions. We do have these regular LinkedIn lives and podcasts, etc. So what I would ask is, if you are keen to hear more, then please do follow us on our TOG website.
Thank you for having us.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.